Hello, everyone. So, let me ask you something. Think about the last time you charged your phone, bought a new jacket, or drove to work. Every single one of those moments was made possible by a global supply chain, a web of thousands of decisions, hundreds of suppliers, and a million of miles of logistics. Now imagine you could engineer that web to be not just faster or cheaper, but cleaner, fairer, and more resilient. That's what we are here to talk about today. A little about myself. I'm a staff engineer at Lucid Motors, where I lead supplier industrialization for our electric vehicle supply chain. Over the past decade plus, I have got the opportunity to make decisions that touched everything from raw material sourcing to battery cell qualification. Decisions that have a direct line to our planet, our products, and our people. I'm also someone who has had to earn her seat at a lot of tables, and I want to talk to you today about how technical expertise, when paired with strategic thinking and a clear voice, can move the world forward. Today, we'll explore three things together: how to reimagine global supply chains for resilience and sustainability, how to grow from technical expert into strategic leader, and lastly, about my experience and learnings from the EV industry. And hopefully, you can apply some learnings in your own industry, if not automotive. So, are we ready? Let's go. I want to change the way you think about supply chains because most people think about logistics. They think trucks, warehouses, spreadsheets, which to some capacity, they're right. But a supply chain is actually a living system. It connects raw materials pulled from the earth to the hands of engineers and factory workers to the innovation happening in labs. When it breaks, and we have all seen what happens when it breaks, everything breaks. Remember the semiconductor shortage, the COVID era port backlogs? More than logistics failure, they were systematic failures and they set back entire industries. But when a supply chain thrives, innovation accelerates. Products reach people faster. And here's what's becoming more and more true. When a supply chain is designed well, it can actually drive sustainability, not as a side effect, but as a core outcome. And now let's address some of the main challenges supply chain faces. First, global complexity. We are not talking about one country or even one region. At any automotive company, teams work with suppliers spanning dozens of countries across multiple continents. Managing quality, risk, and compliance at that scale is one of the defining engineering challenges of our time. Second, speed pressure. Customers don't have patience anymore. And frankly, neither does the market. The pressure to deliver faster, leaner, and cheaper is relentless. And the question is, how do we move fast without breaking things or breaking our values? Third, and this is the one I care about most, the sustainability mandate. It's regulatory, it's investor driven, and increasingly it's consumer driven. The supply chain decisions we make today will define our company's sustainability story for the next decade. So, the question I want to dig into isn't what is the supply chain, it's how do we redesign it from the inside to be stronger and better. Let's start with resilience. Here's the biggest shift I want you to walk away with today. Resilience isn't something you add after things go wrong, it's something you design in from the beginning at every level of the system. The supply chains that survived the last 5 years of global disruption, pandemics, geopolitical tensions, climates, the people who survived weren't lucky. The companies built differently, intentionally. So, talking about the three pillars, pillar number one is diversification. This means actively reducing your dependency on any single source of a critical component. In this practice, that might mean qualifying a second source supplier even when your primary is performing perfectly. It's insurance, it's strategy. It's also one of the hardest sells to make to leadership until something breaks. Pillar 2, transparency. You can't manage what you can't see. End to end visibility into your supply network, knowing not just your tier 1 suppliers, but your tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers, is foundational. This is an area where technology is rapidly advancing. Digital supply chain platforms, real time risk monitoring, even AI driven disruption prediction. And the third pillar, agility. Design your supply chain to flex. That means modular sourcing strategies, dual qualification of key components, and building relationships with supplier who can scale up or pivot quickly. Agility isn't chaos, it's controlled adaptability. I've had to put every single one of those into practice at work. When we face a supply disruption, the question should be more than how we can fix this in long term. It's how does this inform us so that we can design supply strategy going forward. Every crisis should be treated like a design input. So let's talk about embedding sustainability into every decision. Let me be direct about something. Sustainability is not a marketing strategy. It's not a slide you add at the end of the supply review. It is a engineering discipline. And like engineering discipline, it has to be designed in, not bolted on. The question I ask in supplier selection, it's not just like, hey, can you build the specs? You can make this material. It's more than that. It's like, do you have your material? Do you know where it's coming from? What happens when this component's life ends? What is your scrap rate? How do you use recycled material? How do you do your outstream of the parts? So these are engineering questions, and we in this room are the people equipped to answer them. Let's talk about the tier 1, tier 2, 3, tier 3 model that we're seeing here. Think of sustainable supply chain maturity in 3 tiers. At tier 1, the foundation, you're doing scope 3 carbon tracking. You're accounting for the emissions that live in your supply chain, not just your own operations, but all the tiers. And this is where most companies are startling. It's table stakes now. At tier 2, you're using supplier scorecards that include environmental and ethical criteria. You're conducting audits. You're making sourcing decisions based not just on price and quality, but on the values of your supply base. And at tier 3, the top of the pyramid, you're designing for circularity. You're specifying recycled materials. You're working with suppliers to develop processes that eliminate waste at the source. This is where engineering and sustainability become the same thing. Here's why this matters specifically for you. Engineers are uniquely positioned to drive sustainability. We speak the language of specs and tolerance and trade offs. We understand what it actually takes to change a material, redesign a process, or qualify a new supplier. Sustainability teams have the vision, finance teams have the budget, but we have the technical authority to make it real. When you walk into a supplier audit and you say, this process doesn't meet our emission standard, that has teeth, that changes things. Own that power, it's yours. Moving to chapter 2, we'll talk about leadership. And can I be honest about something? For a long time, I thought the work would speak for itself. I thought if I knew the most, solved the hardest problems, delivered the best results, that would be enough to get me to the next level. It's not. And I say that not to discourage you. I say it because I wish somebody had told me this sooner. Technical credibility gets you in the room, but strategic influence is what keeps you there and what lets you shape the decision that actually matters. Sorry. So, the leap from technical experts to strategic leaders isn't about leaving your engineering identity behind, it's about expanding it. It's about learning a new language, the language of business, while still being fluent in the language of engineering. What does that look like in practice? It means when you're presenting a supplier qualification recommendation, you don't just show the technical data, you connect it to what is the cost of delay, what is the risk of program timing, what does it mean for our quarter 3 revenue targets. That translation from engineering to business is a skill, and like any skill, it can be learned and practiced. So, what does the toolkit look like? Let me show you 4 moves that I have seen transform technical engineers into organizational leaders. So, the first one is peak business. Every engineering decision has a business consequence. Your job is to make that connection explicit. Instead of, we need to dual source this component because of supplier risk, try, if we don't dual source this component, we are looking at a potential 6-week production delay with a $4 million revenue impact. Here's what dual sourcing costs and how quickly it pays back. Same idea, completely different level of impact on the room. Second, build cross functional alliances. Build This basically means the decisions that shape supply chain are made by procurement team, finance team, sustainability, design team, and not engineering. If you're not talking to other engineers, you're leaving influence on the table. Partner with these teams, learn what they're optimizing for, find the overlap. That's where your leverage lives. Third is lead with vision. This means being the person in the room who says, here's where we need to be in 3 years, and here's the technical case for why we need to invest now. Strategic leaders don't just solve today's problem, they architect tomorrow's solution, set the technical direction, make the long game visible. And the fourth is claim your seat. And this one is personal. There will be meetings where you are the most qualified person in the room and you still have to fight to be heard. There will be decisions made without you that absolutely should have included you. And there will be moments where you have to choose between staying quiet and speaking up. Speak up. Women in engineering bring perspective, approaches, and instincts that make better outcomes. Your voice belongs in that conversation. Use it. So, now moving to chapter 3, let's talk a little about electric vehicles. Because the electric vehicle transition is arguably the most important supply chain story happening right now. Here's a truth that doesn't get said enough: an electric vehicle is only as good as its supply chain. The performance, the safety, the range, the sustainability of that vehicle, many of it traces back to the decisions made by supply development, often long before the first prototype is built. If you're in this field or considering it, I want you to understand you are at the heart of innovation. You will make decisions that will impact the quality, cost, delivery of the vehicle, and they are the three main pillars of supply chain. So, talking about some core responsibilities, let me make that concrete with three things supplier development engineers do that directly determine the EV quality and sustainability. We do the battery and cell qualification. We evaluate components for safety, cycle life, thermal performance, and reliability before a single vehicle rolls off the line. A bad call here uh, a bad call here doesn't just mean a recall. It means safety incidents, brand damage, and lost trust in EV transition itself. The stakes are very high here. New material introduction. We work on lightweighting, recyclability, and the cost simultaneously. This is where material science meets sustainability and meets manufacturing. Finding a material that's lighter, cheaper, and made from recycled content. That's an engineering challenge, and it matters enormously for the life cycle footprint of the vehicle. And the third is supplier co development. This is the piece that's often overlooked. We don't just buy parts from supplier, we build capability with them. We help them develop new processes, meet new standards, and grow into partners that can innovate alongside us. That's not procurement, that's engineering leadership. So, how does all of this come together? Let's look at the quality pipeline, the full arc from supplier selection to mass production launch. Although in real it's a little more complicated, but this is like a high level overview of how quality is in every step of the supply chain decision. So looking at the pipeline here, every stage from supplier selection to mass production launch is a decision point, and at every decision point there is an engineer making a call that will ripple forward. Stage 1, supplier selection. You're picking a strategic partner here. The criteria you apply: technical capability, sustainability practice, labor fairness, financial stability, cultural alignment define the foundation of your entire program. Stage 2, technology qualification. You're validating that the technology actually does what it claims. This is where rigorous engineering methodology, test plans, failure mode analysis, design of experiments determine whether you have a product worth scaling. Stage 3, pilot validation. You test at scale. You find the things that only appear at volume. You catch the problems that would have become recalls. This is unglamorous, detailed, critical work. And the stage four, the final, where mass production is launched. You ramp reliable volume. This is the payoff and the pressure test of everything that came before. Every quality milestone in an EV program traces back to the decisions made in supply development stage. Engineers who own this process own the outcome and the opportunity to drive both innovation and sustainability simultaneously. So let me leave you with three things I want you to carry out of this room. First, reimagine your supply chain. Whether you're working in EV, semiconductor, consumer good, or biotech, design for resilience and sustainability from the start. Not as a compliance checkbox, as a competitive advantage, because it is. Second, lead beyond the lab. Your technical experience is your foundation. Never abandon it, but layer on strategic storytelling, business fluency, and cross functional partnership. That's how your engineering work shapes decision at every level of the organization. And third, own your role in EV innovation or uh, whatever the transformative industry or domain you're in. Supply development is where the future of mobility is being decided right now. Um, and if that's your world, step into it with full confidence and purpose. Take a beat, slow down, and the most powerful engineers in the room isn't the one who knows the most. It's the one who translates that knowledge into action that moves the world forward. You are that engineer. Thank you.